Students of Truth, please like and subscribe. My name is Wiley Joseph Dollinger III. Any comments or anything, please say so. I am reading from Rupert Sheldrake, a lecture that he delivered in Stuttgart, Germany, January 25th, 1910. I'm actually reading excerpts from parts of the lecture. It's the first lecture in a collection of lectures named all by Rudolf Steiner, named Paths and Goals of the Spiritual Human Being, Life Questions in the Light of Spiritual Science. So it's pretty profound, so I'm just not even going to say anything. Check this out. Do my best reading it. So and I'm just starting in the middle, but this can show us that in spiritual science, the teaching, the theory may not be the main thing, but that it is the kindling, we might say, for the development of the human soul. That is the thing which is intended to bring out higher characteristics in the soul. And anyone who demands this characteristic without knowledge lives in the worst form of deception, in self-deception, the self-deception which has entered human evolution because in the course of our earth development, other beings have also entered and been involved in our evolution. Beings who were not just harmful, but were also useful. But however useful they were in that they taught us freedom and a sense of self, we nevertheless have to be clear that these gifts from the so-called Luciferic beings, freedom and sense of self, must not degenerate to become extreme and radical, because then they become pride and arrogance. Pride and arrogance applied to knowledge lead such knowledge into darkness. Knowledge is acceptance of the divine light, of divine thoughts. Rejection of knowledge is something which leads into darkness, and neither can it lead to higher characteristics in the soul. If we look at spiritual science in this way, then we will recognize it as one of the most important matters in humanity. We will recognize it as something which we do not just for our own sake, but because we are aware of our duty towards humanity and its development. We live today in a time which is not completely unimportant. We live in an important time. It is true that people who live in a given period often say that they live in a transitional period. Every period of human development has already been described as a transitional period, but not all of them have been such important transitional periods. But of our time today, it can truly be said that it is a transitional period. In what respect is this the case? Let us look at the character of another transitional period. A transitional period in human development occurred, for example, when the predecessor of Jesus Christ, John the Baptist, appeared. When John the Baptist appeared, he told people what was later repeated by Jesus in the significant words, quote, "Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand," end quote. What does this mean? We will understand what this means if we recall that human beings, as they developed from incarnation to incarnation, underwent various characteristics in their soul. In ancient times of our past, human beings did not yet possess the characteristics and soul faculties which they have today. It was possible for all human beings in ancient times to develop a dull, hazy, dreamlike clairvoyance, to look into the spiritual world. All human beings had the possibility not just to see the physical, but to look into the spiritual world. But human beings in that time, when such clairvoyance was widespread, did not yet have something which they have today, a clearly developed self-consciousness. Human beings at that time could not yet, in a clear way, say to themselves, quote, "I am," end quote. A firm stance at the center of our innermost being could only be obtained in that the ancient clairvoyance disappeared for a while. Human beings had to put up with the separation from the spiritual world in order to develop a clear self-consciousness here on the physical plane. Later, such clairvoyance will again develop together with self-consciousness so that the two characteristics will occur together again and human beings will possess them again. So we can look back to a time in the distant past. At that time, it was possible for human beings, if they did not pay attention to the physical, and if they closed their eyes and turned away from the physical and made their ears ignore the sounds, that they then looked into the spiritual world and were able to obtain direct certainty of the existence of the spiritual world. So that means people at this time did not have to question if the spiritual world was real like people do today. You couldn't not believe in it, right? Saying, looked into the spiritual world and were able to obtain direct certainty of the existence of the spiritual world. These characteristics waned and were increasingly replaced by the ability of thinking, the ability of self-consciousness, to draw conclusions, of independent judgment, those things which make up our daytime consciousness today. We can put an approximate date on the time when it gradually happened that the ancient clairvoyance faculties disappeared completely from human faculties, before about the year 3101 BC. Almost all people on Earth were still endowed with the hazy clairvoyance then. Then, from that year onwards, it began to decrease more and more. It became increasingly weak. But that made ego consciousness, self-consciousness, judgment, drawing conclusions, self-aware thinking grow. So the light of spirituality grew dark, and that which is the human eye dawned and became brighter and brighter. I'm going to repeat that sentence. So the light of spirituality grew dark, and that which is the human eye dawned and became brighter and brighter. The interior of the human beings became brighter, but spirituality grew darker. This is the year in which what Oriental philosophy calls the Kali Yuga, the dark black age, began. Something was there which, at the time that John the Baptist appeared as the predecessor, followed by Jesus Christ, reached a crisis, we might say, a decision. They had to tell humanity, you now have to learn that there is spirituality, although you do not see such spirituality with any spiritual eyes. You have to learn that the realms of heaven are here. You have to understand this from out of your eye. That is why Christ had to incarnate into a physical body, because self-consciousness in the Kali Yuga was only able to perceive the spirit on a physical plane. That time was a transitional period. The old faculties had disappeared. If people at that time had not heard the call of the Baptist or Jesus Christ, they would have declined at that stage and not managed to progress any further. Those who heard those voices had to recognize the God who had descended as far as physical corporeality. They understood that the realms of heaven had come close to the eye. Christ was in the physical body of Jesus of Nazareth for 3 years. That was the time in which human beings were only able to see with physical eyes when a God descended to them. We are once again living in a transitional period. In a crisis, the Kali Yuga came to an end about 1899, and now new characteristics are developing in human beings even if they do not know it. New characteristics are developing in human souls in a natural way. It is no proof to the contrary that so many people know nothing about it. 100 years after Christ, Tacitus, still referred to an unknown sect in the Christians in the Rome, and in Rome, sorry, my phone's, I don't know if you can hear that. And in Rome, people still told after Jesus Christ had fulfilled the mystery at Golgotha 70 to 80 years beforehand of a sect which was supposed to live in a side street and was led by a certain Jesus. The most important events had passed by innumerable people. If people fail to perceive something, it is no proof that this most important, crucial, incomparable thing does not exist. Since about 1899, faculties have been developing unnoticed in human beings, which will emerge in the mid-30s of the 20th century, in about 1933 to about 1937. He was saying this in January of 1910. So he said, if people fail to perceive something, it is no proof that this most important, crucial, and incomparable thing does not exist. Since about 1899, faculties have been developing unnoticed in human beings, which will emerge in the mid-30s of the 20th century, about 1933 to 1937. Then those soul faculties will emerge in a whole range of people because their time has arrived. Faculties of etheric clairvoyance will arise. They will be there. Just as there were people with an extremely developed ego consciousness when Christ was there will be people in our century who will see not just with the physical eyes, but who will experience a natural development, what strives to come down from spiritual levels, so that soul and spiritual faculties will emerge from their soul and they will enter etheric existence. And the fortune of those people will be to understand the new world they will see. One thing is true, and as such important for our souls, when Jesus Christ said, quote, "I am with you always, even into the end of the earth cycle," end quote. He is here. Since that time, he has been in our earth environment, and when the spiritual eyes open, they will see him. They will see him like Paul saw him at the event in Damascus. That is something which will happen in about 1933. That he will be seen as an etheric being, as a being which, although he has not descended into physical existence, can be seen in his etheric body, because a certain number of people will then ascend into the etheric. But those people will lack understanding if they have not been prepared through spiritual science for what they will see. This is why we are living in a transitional period, because we are growing into a new way of seeing. Spiritual science has the responsible task of preparing human beings for that great moment in which, although he will not appear in the flesh, that was only possible once, he is here, and he will return in a form in which those whose eyes have been opened will see him in the world which is only visible to clairvoyant eyes. Human beings will grow upwards towards him. That is what the return of Christ will be, a growing upwards of human beings into the sphere in which Christ is. But they would stand there uncomprehendingly if they were not prepared through spiritual science for this great moment. Such preparation must be serious because it is full of responsibility. Humanity has to be prepared that more will be seen than was seen hitherto, unless human beings take this faculty into darkness and make it wither, because that could also happen, that the 20th century passes by without leading to the fulfillment of this goal. We have the responsible task of preparing human beings for this great moment through spiritual science, but we must prepare human beings spiritually, make them understand that only the spirit will encounter Christ with opened spiritual eyes. A materialistic view might believe that Christ will appear once again in the physical body, but that would not be spiritual, but materialistic. If we human beings believed that, we would not have the will to work our way up to the spirit. Work our way up to the spirit. If we human beings believe that, we would not have the will to work our way up to the spirit. That is why, in this time, certain prophecies from the book of Revelation will be fulfilled, counting and building on the materialistic spirit. Maya, which is illusion, Maya will be great, and the possibility of self-deception immense. Temptation will grow and become enormous. Only a knowledge of the spirit, which is aware of its responsibility, will bring human beings to the understanding of what is meant to happen. These reflections were intended to show how spirituality through spiritual science is meant to work in individual human souls, and that a knowledge of the spirit is the task of our time, because we can say of our present time, important things lie ahead of us. But because the most important things might be completely overlooked by humanity in the darkness because the great moment could pass without human beings seeing it. That is why spiritual science has to act in the right way, penetrating with our spirit what has been communicated to us by spiritual research will provide the spirituality in each branch which we need in order to develop our own souls to an ever higher level so that we can serve humanity more and more. So, and that's just a part of one lecture. So, for Christ consciousness, Christ in the etheric realm, our inner eye. Okay, so our inner eye, and for me to understand this, the first thing that one of the most my favorite things that I've studied is actually his first book that he wrote. I think he was 19 years old, but it's his first of a 3-book series, his epistemological works, epistemology, the theory of knowledge, and so it's named Goethe's theory of knowledge, an outline of his worldview, but it's written by Rudolf Steiner, and it essentially, even in the introduction, explains that he lays out a theory of knowledge that that teaches people or explains clairvoyant vision and how that works, how clairvoyant vision works, laid it out in the theory of knowledge, even in 3 books. So Goethe's theory of knowledge was book 1. Truth and Knowledge, or Truth and Freedom, is book 2. So I was so surprised at the first paragraph I was reading here, because I knew about our eye just developing in the ancient clairvoyance and that transition with our consciousness, but I didn't know that about the freedom, because again, he released them together, and when he finished the first book, he said he was going to write 2 more books, and he was saying the whole time this is a 3-book set, but the second book was called Truth and Freedom, or Freedom and Truth. And so but anyway, that was just a really profound, just in a really short couple of sentences, that can explain to people. And I don't I don't know. So but I want to share with people, like read some of the books that I feel like will benefit people so that they can identify their consciousness, self-aware, right? Like, and ultimately enlightenment and inner illumination and how it all works. You know what I mean? So like, but I am going to do some classes, but I'm just going to do just that lecture for now.